Hi, everyone. We will get started just a minute or two after the hour just to get some last minute trickle in. But hoping sound is good and you can see the screen. Drew, are you feeling ready? Make sure I can hear you.
Yep, I'm ready when you are.
Okay, awesome. We'll go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for joining us this lovely afternoon for the next hour to talk on the exciting 6th annual Talent Attraction Scorecard. We are here today with myself. Drew, you want to go to that next slide? Yep. Oh, I'm going to prep by saying we apologize. We were sharing our lovely faces, but getting some weird feedback as we were testing. So you don't get to get our our live faces today, but my name is Kara Christopher. I'm Senior Vice President here at MZ Burning Glass, and I lead our sales and marketing efforts. And I'm here with my colleague Drew. Drew, do you want to do a little intro, background, who you are?
Yeah, sure. My name is Drew Rep. I've been at MZ Burning Glass for just a little over 2 years now, and prior to that, I was in economic development for about 7 years at a regional economic development group up in Washington State. And it's my pleasure to get to write up this year's Talent Attraction Scorecard and other research that we do throughout the year.
Awesome. Yeah, Drew and I are coming from, so I'm in Moscow, Idaho, and he's in Spokane, Washington. And also, yeah, we just had a lot of background and history with the Talent Attraction Scorecard. I've been with MZ for 4 years and previously authored this before Drew came and joined the team. And so just been working with communities throughout the past 6 years and bringing rankings and talking through strategies. So today we're going to be talking about this year's Talent Attraction Scorecard, which is really describing how well communities are doing at developing their talent pool. We have the next hour, always hoping to get done a little early, but the next hour to talk about the scorecard, why it was created, the methodology behind it. We're then going to jump into the 2021 rankings. Always interesting to share who's doing well, who's in the top 10 in the makeup of their communities, just so as the audience may not all be from those communities, there's still some interesting takeaways of how communities are doing well and their makeup that you can take to your area. We'll then jump in and look at themes and trends in this year's scorecard. And then always the fun part, strategies and ways in which you guys can take this information and work towards your talent attraction and development efforts. And then we'll end with question and answer. It probably goes without saying, most of us are familiar now with GoToWebinar, but if you guys have questions throughout, please use the box to the side, ask your question. I'll try to moderate and ask them as we go, or wait till the end based on how applicable they are. So just go ahead, want to make this a conversation as much as we can. So that's today's agenda. Drew, can you jump in and talk a little bit about the history of the Talent Attraction Scorecard and the makeup of our ranking?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those that aren't familiar with the scorecard, essentially what we do is each year we create an index to rank all U.S. counties And so we use 6 metrics to do that. We look at overall job growth, skilled job growth, education attainment. And so education attainment is an associate degree or higher. We look at regional competitiveness, which sometimes we refer to as shift share. And this is essentially the number of jobs that are created or are lost based on what would be expected for a community. And so if it's above what would be expected, that's believed to be due to some unique competitive advantage that a region has. We also look at annual openings per capita, and then we look at migration. And for migration, we use IRS migration data from 2015 to 2019. And so that's looking at where a tax return was filed one year compared to the next year. And so we're able to see movement in that way. And so really it serves, it's not a direct number of people moving. It serves as a proxy, so it gives us a good idea of where and how many people are moving between counties. And then we rank that by large, small, and micro. So large counties are those over 100,000 in population. Small counties are 5,000 to 100,000, and then micro counties are 5,000 or less. And so those are the 6 metrics that go into it. We create what we call a Z-score for each county, and we'll show some of those specifics on just how counties are doing across the country as far as their Z-score. But we also use that score to then rank all the counties.
And this index was created 6 years ago in combination with our economists and also economic developers in the field. And what's been interesting is we've kept this ranking and this index for 6 years is our ability to look over time about how communities have been doing, either rising or falling. So just keep that in your mind as we show some visuals today, that there is a fun, interesting historical look back at how counties are ranking.
And I'll also mention, a lot of folks often ask, how we determine skilled jobs. And for parameters for that, we look at, a job that requires either a post-secondary certificate or degree or above, that or long-term on-the-job training, so such as an apprenticeship or a residency or something like that, or 5 or more years of work experience in a related occupation. So that's how we come up with that skilled job category. Just thought I'd throw that out there because a lot of times folks ask about that. So I guess I'll go ahead and jump into some of the rankings and some of the things we're seeing in the top 10. And so top 10 large counties you can see here. 4 counties that are in the top 5 were actually there last year. So Maricopa, Clark, Collin, and Williamson County, Texas, continue to really perform well. Maricopa has been our #1 county for 4 of the 6 years that we've done the rankings. So you're looking at the last 5 years here. So there's actually 1 more year prior in 2016. But Maricopa continues to do really well. You'll also see a few counties that made some real nice jumps that I'm going to talk about in just a minute. Gwinnett County, Georgia, and Montgomery County, Tennessee. And then you also see a few things that kind of pop out. Texas has 3 counties in the top 10. All 3 of those are suburbs or surrounding counties of major metros there in Texas, around Houston and Dallas. And King County, Washington, up in the Northwest, in my neck of the woods, dropped out of the top 10 last year, but climbed back in this year. So that's just a quick kind of overview of our top 10. If you get a little dizzy looking at that Sankey chart, that's okay. I've been in the same boat because I've looked at it a bunch. So I did want to just talk about just a few counties that we also kind of highlight in the report, just in that, they're kind of neat stories and just neat to look at to see what's going on there. Montgomery County, Tennessee is one. If you're not familiar with Montgomery, it lies northwest of Nashville, just up on the northern border of the state with Kentucky. And it made the second largest jump of counties in the top 10. So back in 2016, they were ranked number 115, and they have since climbed 109 spots up into our top 10 at number 6. Something that's pretty neat about Montgomery is they weathered the pandemic year really well. Their jobs fell only about 1% during that year. So in 2019, they had about 63,500 jobs. They stayed above 63,000 jobs in 2020. And looking at our models, we're kind of expecting them to climb to about 65,000 jobs this year. And as we looked at a lot of counties through this, I look at just a number of them when we're diving into the data, and a number of counties really, not surprisingly, had a lot of job loss in 2020. So it's pretty neat that Montgomery weathered that storm pretty well. One reason is they have a pretty broad manufacturing base. And so that can be one reason. A lot of that manufacturing may have slowed down a little bit during the pandemic, but was able to keep going. You'll also see just on the vitals card there about 4,500 total net returns were filed in the county from 2015 to 2019. So again, a good proxy of migration heading into this county. And that 96% net return increase is from 2015 to 2019. And so another kind of neat one is Gwinnett County, Georgia, and it lies northeast of Atlanta. And we'll talk about this a little bit later in the themes and trends, but something that's pretty common with a lot of these that we're highlighting is a lot of these communities and counties lie outside of major metro areas. And so you'll see that theme kind of throughout a lot of the stuff we're discussing today. But Gwinnett, this is its first appearance in the top 10. Its previous high was number 84 back in 2018. And something kind of interesting we found when we were digging into Gwinnett a little bit is that it has 20,000 fewer government jobs than would be expected based on national averages for communities of its size. So, for those in economic development, kind of the result of that means that there's going to be more traded sector jobs and dollars going on in the community. So that was something that definitely jumped out about Gwinnett. They've also had really diverse job growth over the last 5 years. You can see there construction, healthcare, and professional and scientific have all been growing. I think transportation and warehousing also had a big jump as well. So they have a very diverse job growth. It's not all in one area. And some of this could be that it has the benefit of being in a very business friendly state. If you look at various other rankings out there, we do our talent attraction rankings, but there's lots of rankings that look at how business friendly or how good a state is to start and grow a business. And oftentimes Georgia is near the top of that list, if not the top. So they're definitely benefiting from what appears to be a very business friendly climate there in Georgia. And I think I was going to hand it over to Kara to kind of just talk through a little bit of our small county rankings as well.
Okay, perfect. So small counties, which is made up of a population of 5,000 to 99,000, is always a fun one for us to look at every year because there's usually a lot more shakeup. And you can see this, again, looking at the Sankey from 2017 on the left, all the way up to the rankings that we're talking and discussing today, which is the top 10. There's just a lot more shakeup. And as you can imagine, with populations of this size, a new facility, a policy change, one grant can really have big impacts on population and jobs. So every year we always look to see, what county is going to join this ranking, and then what's going on, and diving into the data. So just wanted to we'll want to jump in and share some of the unique findings of a few of these regions. But what's most notable with that shakeup is also the staying power of a few of our groups. So just like the large counties, there were 4 counties that held on to their spot in the top 10 from last year, and that's Reeves County, Texas, Burke County, Georgia, Winkler County, Texas, and Goochland County, Virginia. Looking actually at Burke County, I think is just amazing that they've actually now been in the top 10 for 5 straight years. So like I said, very unique compared to what we usually see in these small county rankings. For Burke County, jobs are up 32%, largely due to an expansion that they had with Vogtle Electric Generating Plant. And there's a new nuclear power plant that's really has started construction in 2013 and is estimated to complete here at the end of December. And due to this, there's just a huge infusion of jobs and local sales from construction. So it'll be really interesting and on Burke County's shoulders to make sure that they're translating a lot of that growth that's happened due to the need for that facility to move into long-term economic growth. So interesting to see if they'll be there next year. Reeves County, Texas, also ranked well, and they ranked well in all of the index categories that we look at. They attracted an educated and highly skilled workforce, really due to being the top oil and gas counties in Texas. And we saw this with the job postings where there's just a huge influx of energy companies from Noble Energy, Occidental Petroleum, and Apache Corporation, as well as staffing firms in the energy industry that are doing just a ton of activity in that region. And as you can imagine, a downfall from that is the county's educational attainment has risen 39% and skilled occupation 73%. So definitely just a county that's really focused around a strong industry. And then Goochland County, Virginia, they are really doing well from an anchor legacy employer who came in 2000, is Capital One's campus, and they have over 5,000 employees. Due to this, the county's educational attainment has risen 123% since that time, as well as they're adjacent to the state capital, Richmond, and benefiting from in-migration from Richmond and surrounding counties of Henrico and Chesterfield. And their migration is up 181%. So just numbers that are off the charts in that region. Jumping in, Drew, if you wouldn't mind going to Grady County, I wanted to talk a little bit about Grady County and Valencia County. So Grady County, Oklahoma, and Valencia County, New Mexico, which were two counties that just made huge leaps. Grady is adjacent to Norman, Oklahoma, and the University of Oklahoma in Cleveland County, as you can see in this map here. Similar to the story that Drew was talking about Gwinnett and some trends that we saw just in general, Grady County is seeing benefits from being in an area, this really fast-growing Tri-City area that's made up of Newcastle, Tuttle, and Blanchard. And it's really interesting because you can see that a lot of people here in this orange are living in Grady County, but they're able to commute into where their jobs are in Oklahoma City. Also, the county is home to the University of Science and Arts of Oklahoma, and then graduates from there, as well as University of Oklahoma and Norman, is just bringing a migration, which is a nice combo for the educational attainment that they're doing well in this region. And then lastly, for small counties, wanting to highlight Valencia County, just has had a huge amount of notable investments since 2019. They had the Facebook data center came online, which is bringing roughly 300 permanent jobs and expected to go along with 1,000 construction workers who will be employed on site until 2023. Right after that, Facebook announcement, Niagara Bottling and Manufacturing Keter Plastics made announcements of joining the area. So they're going to see just a lot of investment from that. And because of that, overall job growth, skilled job growth has risen 8% just in that since that last year, with a 20% rise in educational attainment. And then migration jumped 367%, which is contributing to their steady population growth. So this is Valencia's first appearance in the top 10, and it previously was at number 170. Just based on what we're seeing, they likely are going to have some staying power here for a while. So that's what I have for small counties.
Cool. Thanks, Kara. Yeah, it's always interesting with small counties to look at just how, kind of you mentioned with Reeves County in Texas, just how it can revolve around a particular commodity, or in Goochland, a particular company, and just the benefits that come with that. And then Also just being cognizant of potential downsides to that. I think we've always heard stories of when a legacy employer picks up and moves, and so just the importance of continuing to work with those companies or within that industry to make sure that there's staying power. So always fun to look at the small counties. So for the next portion, we wanted to start looking just at a few themes and trends that we kind of dove into in the report. And so there's 3 of them. And the first one, and so we've kind of touched on it a little bit when we talked about some of those highlighted counties, is basically this theme of spreading out, that a lot of the counties we saw having success lied outside major metros. And something I always kind of like to look at when looking at kind of those demographic changes and people's movement is looking at the research of William Fry with Brookings. He follows this really closely, and so he's a good one to lean on if you're ever looking for some thoughts on this. But so this was from some of his research, and you can just see over the last decade, just the annual growth rate there of primary cities versus suburbs, and you just see beginning around 2014, 2015, you start to see the growth rate starting to fall in primary cities. Conversely, while it's falling a little bit as well, not nearly as much, the growth rate in suburbs. And just kind of another view of that same concept, looking at urban cores there from 2010 up through 2019, just a huge drop off in their annual growth rate compared to mature suburbs, emerging suburbs, and exurbs that have seen their annual growth rate either stay strong or increase. So that is something that we saw playing out in our rankings as well, as we just keep talking about with these communities around major metros. And we actually looked at the 5 largest metros and the counties they're in. And we have a neat data set. It's our professional migration data. And what we're able to do with this is it looks at online profiles and resumes. And so it gives us a little bit more real-time data on where people are moving. IRS migration data lags by close to 2 years. And so while it's a great, very solid data set, one slight flaw to it is its timeliness. But by looking at professional profiles and resumes, we're able to see more recently where people are moving around. And so in 2020, you can see here for Cook County, which is Chicago, and Harris County, Houston, just the top 5 counties where people moved in 2020. So this was someone who had a professional profile, maybe as an accountant or something like that in Chicago, and then their profile then updated to being in Will County or Lake County in 2020. And so you can see typically where people are moving is they're moving out, with the exception of LA County. A lot of times when we're looking at these, LA County always kind of sneaks in. So there's always perhaps that group of folks that are taking their stab at Hollywood. Maybe 2020 with the pandemic, that was the year that someone decided to give that a go. And so we also looked at LA County, New York County, and Maricopa County, and very similar trends as far as people just spreading outwards to surrounding counties. So another theme that we looked at is just kind of what's going on regionally. So we talked about at the beginning just how we create this Z-score. So this is basically each county's score out of the roughly 3,000 counties we have. And you can kind of just see, looking visually here, kind of the Northwest, Mountain West doing well. You see kind of states, Texas and Florida also doing well, the Southeast doing pretty well. Conversely, there's some areas that are struggling, kind of the coast of California is doing pretty poorly. Actually, Los Angeles County is our very bottom ranked county with a Z-score of about -100, whereas Maricopa County is the top ranked county at a score of about 71. You see the Northeast generally is struggling a little bit, with the exception of Maine, that's doing okay up there. So there's just kind of these regional trends going on. Again, with California, you have counties like San Diego that I think came in ranked at 594 out of our 602 large counties. I think I'm checking some rankings here. I think Ventura County came in at about 520. Santa Clara, a lot of the Northern California were all around 500. I think San Francisco County came in at about 451. So a lot of those coastal California counties struggling. But as far as areas doing well, again, we mentioned Texas and Florida. 23 of the top 40 large counties come out of those two states. So this has been a trend that's been going on for the last few years. They're doing really well. On the right here, you can kind of see just how this plays out with our Z-score. You see at the top there, the US Z-score for all counties, large counties, and then small counties. And so Southeast and Mountain above those medians, the Northwest above those medians, and then you kind of see the Northeast below that. And then you kind of see Texas and Florida, how they're doing in that area as well. So it's always kind of interesting to see regions. I think something kind of neat, just going back here real quick, is kind of the middle part of the country. Unfortunately, sometimes referred to as flyover country or that sort of thing. But those areas seem to be doing well, and so there's often been this theme of rural America really struggling, but at least in our rankings, there's definitely some reason for optimism there, as it looks like a number of those middle America counties seem to be doing pretty well in this regard. So that's always neat to see. Something else we thought would be kind of interesting to look at, there's been these headlines over the last few years around this idea of quote unquote people moving from quote red states to blue states, and we wanted to see if that jived at all with our rankings. And so by no means are we claiming any sort of causation here. We were just looking, is there perhaps some correlation with that headline and our rankings? And so something we did is we just divided states by the political party of their governor. There's different ways you could do that. Obviously, you could look at presidential elections. You could look at makeup of state legislatures. But going by governor party, we felt was what was the cleanest. And we just wanted to say, okay, well, if they were a quote unquote red state, how are they looking in our rankings versus a blue state? And so you see kind of some of the breakdown there. The average rank of 241 versus 368, and then the median Z-score of 166 versus negative 159 for those two groupings for large counties. Not quite as much of a difference there looking at small county median Z-scores. So again, not looking to make any outlandish statements there, just looking at a little bit of perhaps correlation. Something that's always interesting when doing any kind of research is that it always leads to potential more research. We weren't looking to do a political science study, but it might be something to look into more and diving into just what's going on with that potential correlation there. And I'm just going to take a quick drink of water. And so, Kara, if there's anything you wanted to pop to mind, but
no, you're doing a great job, Drew.
Thanks. So last theme here. It might seem kind of obvious, but that to have talent and to have that talent be developed, you first need people. And so we wanted to tie in to another report that we looked at last year, which was the demographic drought. And that report talked about what we were calling the SANS-demic. So SANS is without, endemic people. And that report made the argument that we're kind of at the beginning of this Sandsdemic, that because of those three items listed there, baby boomers retiring, a dropping male labor force participation rate, and low birth rate, that we're on the onset of a Sandsdemic, which results in a very tight labor market. And so we're experiencing a lot of that now. The question is how much of that is kind of COVID induced and COVID recovery induced, and likely that's a majority of it right now, as we're just in this very unique time of recovering from a very unique situation. But it's kind of interesting to think that it's potentially a bit of a foretaste of what we're going to see in decades to come, as more of these three factors come to fruition, and the result will just be a continuingly tightening labor market. And so just wanted to look at a few quick visuals to give a sense of that. So on the baby boomer item, you see over there the last number of years, the annual increase in boomer retirements, and then in 2020, you see a pretty significant jump. And so obviously with boomers retiring, lots of experience, lots of institutional knowledge that's walking out the door, that's a lot, can be very hard to replace. And so that might be something that businesses in your community are experiencing now, just the difficulty in filling those kinds of jobs. The other thing, the prime age male labor force participation rate has been really dropping off a cliff since looking back to about 1970. And so that prime age is 25 to 54. And you know, there's lots of theories and potential reasons why for this, and actually the demographic drought dives into some of those more. But regardless of the reasons, we're seeing this huge drop off in this male labor force participation rate. And then kind of the impacts of decades of a decreasing birth rate. We're starting to see the impacts of that now. So this is looking at the percent change in working age population between 2001 and 2010. And so you see the growth and the decline across the counties, and you see quite a bit of blue there. But what's interesting is when you jump to 2010 to 2020, just how much less blue there is. And so when we're talking working age population, and just kind of going back and forth there, we're talking those that are between the ages of 15 and 64. And so just quite a bit of change there. And so as businesses and organizations are looking to hire people, they're looking to hire a continually declining pool of people. Kind of another way to look at kind of the impacts of that birth rate is to look at the under 15 population. So again, this is looking between 2001 and 2010, and you see the amount of blue there, but then you jump forward to 2010 to 2020, the under 15 population looks a lot different. And so something that we would propose to communities is that to some degree, communities that are going to continue to excel in talent attraction and development are simply going to be those that have a solid population and a solid growth rate, and that those that will kind of be the runner-ups in talent attraction will be those that find a way to mitigate the impacts of these three factors. And we'll talk about some of that kind of in the strategies section. But in going back and looking at kind of this change in working age population, when we looked at our rankings, counties with the largest growth in working age population all rank in the top 50 of our large counties. But meanwhile, those with the biggest reductions in working age population over the last 5 years really dominated the bottom of the rankings. So this working age population is going to continue to be, we think, a big component of talent attraction. So those are kind of the three themes that we call out in the report. If you haven't had a chance to download the report, we would encourage you to do that, where we just expand on those a bit more. But with that, would love to kind of jump into some strategies now.
Yeah, so I'll start that with saying that was a good ending, Drew, to how we're thinking about strategies, which at the end of the day, you need to have people to perform the tasks that businesses are needing. And obviously that's just getting harder and harder. And so one of our big takeaways, although this report is called the Talent Attraction Scorecard, that really talent development is gonna have to likely go through a mind shift where it's less about buying talent, so communities that are attracting talent with amenities or businesses upping salaries to steal away talent just isn't a long-term strategy, because at the end of the day, there's only so much talent to go around. And so instead of a buying strategy, really a building strategy where you're valuing your people and you're investing in them, the people that are in your region today, investing in them, investing in your businesses, is that's likely the place where you're going to see more long-term growth. So to jump in and start though, and go back to talent and talent attraction, however, is still a very important and smart strategy, and it's especially something that you can control and start now. So although it's not the only strategy, it is something that we still recommend in communities that, you know, just thinking about all strategies, got to diversify. So you obviously want a talent attraction strategy in addition to more things. So as I talk about some of these strategies, we've developed these again over time with different economic development organizations, workforce development organizations. Really interesting over the last 6 years to see organizations take this model. I think what's interesting about it is we break it out into various timeframes, and just wanting to say as we go through these, this is not something you can do alone. This is something that's a full community effort with business partners, with economic workforce development, and colleges and universities. So this first part is a 0 to 6 month strategy, just as I was saying, one that you can start right now, and it's really looking at your what's in your control for attracting talent. Just as the data was showing, it's pretty clear that movers aren't going too far. So especially if you're in a location that's close to large metros. So something important to note is ignore that stigma that's been going for a while that suburbs or exurbs are uncool, and embrace that one thing that actually you can control, which is your location. And know that actually over time, over the last probably 5 years, has become really a desirable place for working age adults, which is a key part of what you need in your businesses. Also, COVID, the last couple, year and a half, has really spurred differences in migration and different attitudes that people have had, which is Gen Z and millennials are really as we've seen, more interested in making larger career changes, okay with looking and moving to seek different ways of life. So being able, especially during this next time as reshuffling is happening, to capture folks that may be interested in your area. And then lastly, your community doesn't have to be all things to all talent. So with the influx of movers, that means there's a big base of people that are attracted to maybe what your community has to offer. And so you don't need to try to be all things, just be yourself. But the biggest thing there is you need to be properly branded. And I think the marketer in me just knows that in this strategy, you just really smart marketing, smart website, smart discovery of who you are, but then also really investing in marketing, because nowadays it's one thing to get your brand right and understand via data like who you are, how you can attract people, but the more you can bring in digital marketing strategies, have a website, actually get in front of the folks that you're trying to attract, is going to be what's setting people apart in this phase.
And I would just add, a report we cite in the Talent Attraction Scorecard is pretty interesting. It looks at basically just, the millennial generation is a pretty wide age band. And, following the Great Recession, it was a lot of those millennials that ended up moving into cities, large metros, major metros. And now as those folks are getting into their mid 30s, there's this, you see this kind of out migration as those folks are having families and that sort of thing. And so they're heading out. At the same time, there's still some, it's not all bad for those major metros, is because essentially you have the very younger millennials that are now moving into cities. So there's lots of neat research out there that's just kind of looking at how these demographics are changing. And so kind of just being very cognizant of that with your talent attraction strategy, I think is pretty important.
Great. So jumping into the next phase, which is a 6-month to 2-year strategy, this is really a place where communities and businesses can come together outside of the traditional education path and really own a strategy that they can make happen today. So this is really important. The recovery of communities and economy is going to depend largely on how we respond to changes from COVID. So last year and a half, we've all been adapting to new economies, new forms of work. We MZ Burning Glass recently released a report called After the Storm, where we estimate up to 25% of workers will need to switch jobs in a post-pandemic economy. We jump into different sectors that are driving that. But an ability to help your region quickly pivot to in or to key sectors of growth is going to be really vital. So one place and where to start is that if you follow any MZ Burning Glass information, we are all about using and leveraging skill data. So skill data comes really from from the language of job postings as well as the language of people, and believe that it's the common language that are used in the marketplace. And using skills is where we can really understand what your businesses want, as well as the people, the supply of your talent, and make better job connections. So one way is to understand I guess the first point here is you need to be talking with your employers. You need to understand what they're needing. And some of this is not just taking for face value what individual employers need, but also using job posting data to see trends, to see aggregate information, and to have a two-way conversation about what's needed in your region so that you can build kind of a more strategic strategy to helping get your workforce available for that demand. Also important in this, it says on here, and workers, you have a really important pulse on what the supply of talent in your region is wanting, is needing, and just staying ahead of what people are wanting today. Hybrid home and office schedules. They want to look for organizations that are mission aligned. These are just really important pieces that you can be bringing to your businesses. So the closer you get to your businesses, closer you get to your people, the more you can be that connection point to strategies. Also, a combination of human and technical skills is really required for today. I think that was obvious when the pandemic hit. It forced a large number of people to leave the service and hospitality jobs. So being able to find who your available talent is and thinking about reskilling and upskilling is just incredibly important. And one thing that Drew did a really nice job, he wrote an article a couple months ago on aligned transition. So looking at your workforce and understanding that hospitality worker, how you can get them out of that circle of just finding other hospitality jobs, but using those skills and translating them to aligned occupations. It wouldn't be a webinar if I didn't do a shameless plug to a product that we just launched called Skillfit, which enables job seekers to actually understand the skills that they've gotten from previous jobs or from previous education and better match themselves to available jobs within the region. And this is just really important. We have so many people that have been dislocated, so many people on the sidelines, and as Drew has mentioned, just not that many people to go around. So the more that we can get them seeing a vision to a job will be incredibly important here. And then last but not least, I mentioned this is really a business and community strategy here. So finding flexible and adaptable programs such as coding academies and business incubators is going to be super important here, and lots of just cool firms coming out to help with more of that. And then working with businesses to implement regional specific and just-in-time programs is going to be a part to helping develop the responsive training to local needs at this stage.
Cool, thanks, Kara. I was gonna jump in here and walk through a few more of the strategies. So next one, we're looking at 2 to 4 years out, so technical and certificate programs. And so in many ways, this is kind of just a continuation of the previous when looking at just-in-time programs and that sort of thing. So we're just looking at a little bit longer time frame, a little bit more investment in training and that sort of thing. And it's kind of interesting because, roughly 18 months ago, the big question was, how do we support those that are unemployed? But now, again, talking about the demographic drought, we're in this situation where there's more jobs, roughly, 10.5 million than there are unemployed people. There's, roughly 7.5 million that are unemployed. So there's just this huge shakeup that's going on in the economy and the job market, where everything's kind of continuing to evolve. So it's just resulting in this demand for new and different skills, and people's views of change or views of work are changing. And so I think there's a lot of people that are just trying to figure out, how do I plug into this economy and this job market that is changing so much? Where do my skills fit? Where can I have long-term success? Where can I have long-term growth? And so through technical and certificate programs is a great place to start finding those connections. And so this is definitely an area for really starting to grow that skilled worker base. We talk in our scorecard how we look at skilled occupations. That's not just jobs that require a college degree, but those are jobs that require, apprenticeship or a very specific certification or on-the-job training. And so that's a lot of the jobs in people's communities. And so kind of like the last slide talking about the importance of existing businesses, that's another theme here as well, that just as it's important to understand the needs of businesses trying to find talent right now, it's really important to understand the needs that they see on the horizon. And so they're going to be the ones that recognize the technologies and trends of their industry, and to thus inform EDOs and workforce organizations on those technical skills that should be prioritized. Kind of the second point there, if you're not already doing it, most communities are, but obviously really important to make sure you have a relationship with your community colleges, whether that's a formal partnership or informal, but they have the ability to be pretty flexible in their programming. And so as you're learning about jobs that are becoming more prevalent in your community, skills that are needed, the community college can often adapt their programs to meet those needs. And so really important to just have a very good working relationship with them. And then lastly, through a lot of these technical and certificate programs, resilient skills can be built. And so when we talk about resilient skills, MZ Birdinglass thinks of them as those skills which help people flourish both in good times and bad. And so a lot of times these are skills, these are human skills or soft skills as they're sometimes called, communication, problem solving, teamwork, those types of things. And when those human skills are coupled with a technical skill, you really create a worker that's very valuable to employers, and that has a lot of resiliency when they have that nice combination of human and technical skills. And so it's through community college programs, certificate programs, where that technical skill can be added to a human skill. So that's something to focus on as well in kind of this 2 to 4 year range. And then 4 to 7 years out, looking at higher education. So nothing new here, that local colleges and universities are really, the pipeline that bring a lot of high-skilled workers into your region. I'm kind of thinking back to Grady, Oklahoma, just with the arts and science university they have within the county, and then being adjacent to University of Oklahoma in Norman, just the benefits that a higher education institution has for bringing in and developing high-skilled workers. But the big thing, we've all heard of brain drain, just the goal of preventing that pipeline from being diverted elsewhere. A lot of times we use profile analytics as a tool we have to really track alumni migration and see how far people are moving, or graduates are moving away, how many of them are staying in the area. So that's a good way to get a pulse on that. But as far as helping those graduates stay, one of the great things you can do is promote local careers. So whether that's the green economy that's continuing to emerge, or changes in healthcare jobs, in each region, those jobs are going to look a little bit different. The skills needed for those are going to be a little bit different. And so we look a lot at skill clusters, which is essentially how a certain set of skills correlate together into a particular theme of work in a particular region. And so kind of having a good understanding of the skills needed in these areas within your region, and beginning to work with your university system and discussing that with graduates. Here are the kind of skills that are going to be needed to get plugged into these kind of career areas in our region is really important. A similar component to that is what we call skillifying curriculum, and really taking a skills-based approach to curriculum. So again, the skills are the language used by job seekers and education and employers, that when working with a university, if you can work with them on their curriculum of really pulling out what are the skills being taught in that curriculum, and how does that connect to the skills being sought by employers, is going to be really valuable in students being able to see that connection of, with this program, with this degree, I can plug into this kind of job that I know I'm interested in with these skills. And then also just leveraging data to track new trends. Talking about different certificates out there, Google career certificates, I think, launched last year, really tracking job posting data to see how, say, a new certificate like that is becoming more prevalent in job postings. Also things like salary information in job postings. We recently discovered that since 2016, there's been roughly a 66% increase in job postings that include salary information. And so working with employers on that, saying, graduates are going to be expecting to know what kind of salary they can make in these jobs, and just identifying those trends and making sure you're leveraging them. And then lastly, as Kara mentioned, kind of at the top with these strategies, that it's definitely a long-term game. It's not something that happens overnight, and it takes time and investment. And a lot of these things, the fruits of them might not be seen for a while, but especially if this Sandsdemic plays out in the ways we think it might, that those communities that right now start making that foundation and making those investments, again, will likely be able to retain more people. Schools will be able to retain more students, and companies retain more of their existing workforce. They're going to continue to hopefully mitigate these impacts of a Sandsdemic better. So a few things to just kind of be thinking about: introducing careers and opportunities very early on. This goes back to a lot of career connected learning type programs, on the job, or opportunities for students to get into employers and see what they're doing. The sooner that students can start thinking about those opportunities in their community, and they can learn that something I'm interested in, I don't have to move to find a job in that area, the better. And that's going to be a way to retain people and students. Making sure that the information gap is as small as possible, and this goes into keeping students in the pipeline. That many of the things of whether it's career guidance resources or programs, making sure students are aware of those, so that they don't drop out of a quality pipeline that they're in. And a lot of this likely was made more difficult during COVID with school being in flux. And so a lot of students might not have learned about opportunities, whether it's scholarships or grants or community college transfer programs, work studies, that sort of thing. And so economic development groups can really play a really important part in essentially facilitating those connections. It may take the form of an information campaign from a chamber, but whatever it is, making sure that students know about the opportunities available to them so that they stay in the pipeline. And then lastly, advocating for necessary investments. And so this might be things that kind of fall outside of the direct education realm, or employer support type programs or that sort of thing, typical retention and expansion programs. But there are things that are really important to perhaps getting people who are on the sidelines into good jobs. And so this can be things like public transportation, expanded bus routes. High-speed internet is obviously one that's we've known rural and certain urban communities have really needed, but that was really driven home during the pandemic. So it could be those investments that need to be made. We worked with a community once to look at the barriers that were impacting their ALICE population and just how that was making the different barriers that were specific to that population. And once you know those barriers, you can then advocate for those investments. And this definitely falls into that 7 to 10 year, if not longer, time frame. Some of these things, it might take a time to garner the necessary support. It might take time to make changes or tweaks to legislation, that sort of thing, to get into a state budget. And so this is definitely those kind of items that are on the long-term horizon, but it's good to start thinking about them now and start taking those steps now. So yeah, I think those are our 5 phases. And looking at the clock real quick, well, 3 minutes. That's better than being all the way to the end of the hour. I have a little bit of time for Q&A.
Yeah, awesome. Please, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. But I've seen a couple come through, so I'm happy to vet a few and in the next couple minutes here. So one question says, can we access IRS tax filing data through MZ? If not, how and where can we get it? So yes, if you are a subscriber to MZ Developer, you can access a migration report through the regions tab. And that data is available. But I do think important to note that this index is not available in MZ Developer. It is research that Drew has analyzed and done. So if you're curious about your ranking, we have a place where you can see your ranking from this year, but we also have ranking information over time, as well as how well you did on each of the indicators. So if that is something of interest, please reach out. We're happy to share. Just a cool, I don't think, I'll ask Drew, I don't think we jumped into this, but I think a cool observation and maybe a cool future research report is, are there particular occupations which are becoming more outbound in migration patterns from urban centers to suburbs, exurbs, rural? Was that something, Drew, that you looked into? I know it's not something I have.
So we're hoping to look into that soon. So when I talked about that professional migration data, so that's where we're looking at profiles and resumes. At the moment when we were writing the report, we currently just had how many people were moving from county to county, state to state, and between MSAs. But the next iteration of that data is we're going to be able to start breaking it down yes by job. And so yeah, we're really excited to be able to see just that sort of thing of yeah, how many data scientists moved out of San Francisco County and where did they go? We're hoping to get our hands on that fairly soon because we're very excited to see what that tells us.
That's awesome. Someone asked if the methodology's changed in the past few years, and no, it has not. So I think that that's a benefit to looking over 6 years how your ranking has shifted, especially as we jumped into these longer term strategies. If you've started from the beginning about focusing on this work, interesting to see how things are hopefully trending in the right direction for you. So we'll have that data if you're interested. We have a question, one last question. How are you dealing with job postings, which are clearly posted across many regions? Very good point. So if you're a subscriber to MZ Developer, we have a report called Job Postings, where you can look at the different job postings based on companies that are posting in your region, but that means that companies could be posting in your region but not actually located there. So there's good sides to both where you can see who's trying to attract your talent away. And how we currently recommend you filter that is researchers should look and filter based on the companies that they know are local. And that's a way to just really focus those strategies on the businesses in your region. But we do have coming we're going to have a location filter, so it will allow you to say local companies only, which will be a game changer for folks that are wanting to really jump into that. So I hear that's coming, and I don't have a specific date, but something to look out for. So we're right at the top of the hour. Just want to say thank you again for everyone that has joined this webinar. Just want to give a congratulations to anyone that's joined, who's said like, man, I'm doing well in these strategies, or seeing yourselves on the top of the rankings. Congratulations for all the work that has gone in to what you guys do to bring, attract and develop talent in your region. So thanks for joining us, and have an awesome day.
Thanks, everyone.